Welcome to the CouchScouts podcast. We provide league-winning analysis, advice, and tools to help you dominate your league and build a dynasty. Scout, draft, win. Here's your host, Matt Cooper.
Welcome to the CouchScouts podcast. I'm your host, Matt Cooper. With me is nobody. I'm alone tonight. It's our first ever solo podcast on the CouchScouts network here. Both Matt Jackson and Matt Rupert are out of town this week. And so usually there's always been at least two out of the three of us available. But tonight you just get me. So we are pressing on, though. We're continuing our Inside the Prospect series, which if you've been following along, we have been going every week. We're diving into a different prospect from the 2025 rookie class and breaking them down trait by trait from a dynasty perspective and kind of what we notice in the film. But tonight we're doing Ohio State wide receiver and now national champion Emeka Egbuka. He is listed at 6'1", 205 pounds. He was the former number one overall wide receiver in his class. He was a 5-star prospect. And, because of that, he was once kind of a darling in the Devy community, if you play that format. And, most people, I think, have kind of forgotten about him. I don't know if it's because of how long he's been in school or just because he's not, he's not the most exciting, explosive, highlight reel kind of guy, but we're going to get into it. Is it right or wrong that people have kind of faded him a little bit? And I'm excited to dig in. Matt Jackson says, I'm still here, listening in the car. Miss you, man. Miss you too. It's not going to be the same doing this without conversation. I feel like I'm just spewing information at you guys. So y'all definitely get in the chat. I'll have a little bit more time on the show tonight to respond to comments than I normally do. When we talk production from Emeka Egbuka, he came in. It's been a little up and down journey for him, right? So he came in slow. His freshman season, he was waiting his turn behind. They had Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, and Jackson Smith-Njigba all on the team that year. Only 9 receptions that season. But as a second-year player, obviously Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave moved on. He became part of a 3-headed attack with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Jackson Smith-Njigba. And then JSN spent a lot of that year hurt. So Egbuka becomes the de facto number 2. And he put up 74 receptions, over 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns as a sophomore. And that was really exciting. Junior year, not so exciting. He spent a lot of that battling through injury, only 41 catches, just over 500 yards, 4 touchdowns. So he didn't declare. He comes back to school this year as a senior. He was kind of part of another little 3-headed monster with Carnell Tate, who's a potential first-round pick next year, and Jeremiah Smith, who is easily a first-round pick in 2 years from now when he will be the clear wide receiver 1. Probably the best true freshman wide receiver season of all time. So, but he had 81 receptions, over 1,000 yards, another 10 touchdowns. So kind of bounced back to similar production from his sophomore year. Pretty respectable season. Not setting the world on fire. You're not looking at like a 1,600 yard receiving year or anything like that, but pretty solid. So now he comes out, declares for the draft, and let's talk about it. Let's talk about what kind of prospect Emeka Egbuka is. And if you're new to the show, which I know a lot of you are because we were on the FFT Dynasty show on Friday, and a lot of you guys kind of found us there. It's been really cool seeing all the new members pouring into our Discord over the last few days. So if you're new, I want to give you just a little rundown of our format. So we are primarily film grinders. So we watch at least 5 games. In this case, I watched a lot more of all 22. That's coach's tape where you can see everybody on the field. So the wide receiver, for example, doesn't go off the screen running his route. You see the whole thing. And so I watched multiple games of all 22, the full game, every snap he's on the field, not just the highlights and the targets. And Mike says, keep crushing it, Matt. We're big fans of Emeka here. All right. So, um, Mike Anthony, Dynasty Dogs, y'all should follow him. He likes Emeka Egbuka. Let's find out if I do or not. So we go trait by trait. And for wide receivers, we always start with the release and route running. Our philosophy for scouting this position is that if their first job is to get open. If they get open, they're going to earn targets. And if they earn targets, they're going to produce from a fantasy perspective. Second job is to catch the ball. So we talk about things like catch radius, contested catch, how reliable are his hands, things like that. And then kind of third as a cherry on top is what can they do after the catch? Can they create extra yards or even touchdowns after the catch by making players miss, getting those extra hidden yards? And so we'll kind of go in that order tonight. We'll start with the release and the route running for Emeka Egbuka. And when I get into that category specifically, I would say I was really impressed overall. The release, it took a little bit of extra digging. I mentioned I did more than the usual 5 games this week, and a lot of that is he was a unique, hard to grade prospect in some ways because this year he played pretty much exclusively out of the slot, which meant I saw no contested catches, no releases against press coverage. And so it's kind of hard to give grades in those areas where you're not seeing the reps. So I actually went all the way back to his sophomore year in 2022 when JSN was out. And so he was playing, and even when JSN was in, JSN was a slot guy. So you saw Emeka Egbuka playing on the outside more back then. So I went back and dug into some of those games to see what could he do as far as a release against press coverage. And overall, I liked what I saw. I think he still didn't face it a ton, and he wasn't like blowing me away. It wasn't like, oh man, he's torching press coverage every time they try to press him. But it was solid. He had a nice little release package, had some good footwork, could do some hand fighting. It was respectable. It wasn't a weakness in his game. And so when I got into my grading for Egbuka this year, I gave him a 7 on release, which is solid, respectable, nothing to write home about. But for the route running, I gave him a 9. And that's the highest grade that I've given to anybody in this class so far. And, we'll see when all is said and done. It might be the highest grade that I do give in this class. It's hard to get a 9 out of 10. That means he's incredible, even for an NFL player. And so, what I noticed from Egbuka at the stem of his route was really impressive. He reminded me a lot, and I know this is helmet scouting because it's the same team, but Olave and Jackson Smith and Jigba, a lot of similarities to those two players in terms of being a finesse guy. So fires his feet really well, masks his intentions to keep the DB guessing. So at any point in his route, he doesn't have any tells that indicate to the defensive back if he's about to stop on a dime and break off a route or break left or break right. And he just was continually manipulating the defense to turn their hips. And, those breaks off of his route, he was creating a lot of separation. Really clean, really crisp, great footwork, great technique. And so the superb route running, I think, is kind of his calling card. If you follow Matt Harmon's work, if you don't, you should. He's kind of the GOAT of wide receiver evaluations. Matt Harmon, his receptionperception.com, he puts out these route charts where he's tracking success rate on different route types. Egbuka ran every route in the book. So he, slants, digs, curls, posts, corner routes, out routes, you name it, he ran it. Very diverse route tree, and he did all of them well. So he's going to be one of these all green Christmas tree route chart type guys, I think, when we see Harmon stuff come out. Maybe he won't be, but that's my prediction just from watching the tape. And that goes a long way with me because I think route running is super important, especially if you're a guy that's going to play primarily out of the slot. And he was creating a ton of separation. This is one of the reasons it was hard to evaluate his contested catch, because if you're always open, you don't have a lot of contested catches. And he was an always open type of guy. So I love that about Emeka Egbuka. As far as getting into those ball skills, so, the next category here after our release and route running is, what are his hands like? How does he do in contested situations? What's his catch radius, which is kind of how far can he reach out to get the ball in a 360-degree radius? Body control. Can he contort his body and, reach behind him or make these catches that are outside away from his frame? All of those things, ball tracking deep down the field when a ball, he's got to come back for it or it's coming over his shoulder. Does he lose track of where it is or is he right place, right time? So all of that plays into ball skills. And overall, this was probably his least impressive area for me. Um, and it's not to say that he was terrible at it. I did see a couple of concentration drops on the tape. Um, but to be fair, I saw 2 in the same game against Michigan State, and it was the first game that I watched, and maybe that colored my opinion of him because I did not see more than maybe one the entire rest. And I watched, maybe 8 games. So to say that he's got a huge issue with drops would be overstating it, but there were a few on the tape, and I will say that again, contested catch, not his strong suit. He's a finesse player. He was open most of the time, so not that many reps. But when I did see him in contested catch situations, he wasn't very good. Didn't really have the strength to kind of fight through and go up and get those balls. He let the ball into his body a little bit more than I would have wanted to see instead of reaching out and catching it away from his frame consistently. And the catch radius, not terrible, not great. He's listed at 6'1". Didn't look like he had super long arms. I'll be interested to see how that measures out at the combine. But yeah, I would say average for catch radius, a little below average for contested catch. Um, Pretty solid body control and and respectable hands. Not amazing hands, not terrible hands. So the ball skills came out pretty average for me across the board. You're looking at 6s and 7s in my grading chart. So let's get into the yards after catch and the speed, the athleticism, all that kind of stuff, because I do think he's above average in those areas. So for game speed, I gave him an 8.5. I felt like he really had the speed to take the top off the defense. Defenders were consistently on their heels. They had to respect it. And, it's not like Xavier Worthy speed, but it's good speed. It's above average. He definitely can stretch the field. And he was winning at all 3 levels. So his routes, some of the guys that we've talked about, um, already through this process, we've either said, oh, they catch a lot short to intermediate, but they're not really going deep. We said that a little bit about Tet McMillan, or the opposite. They're going deep a whole lot, but not a lot in the short to intermediate game. Egbuka does it all. So really well-rounded from that perspective. Definitely has the speed to win deep down the field and was turning DBs around on posts and corners and really creating good separation deep down the field. So I gave him an 8 for burst. I gave him a 9.5 for quickness. I felt like his change of direction was probably his best trait. He was so he was more quick than explosive, and that showed up with that route running because he could really just sink his hips and change directions very easily, and he would turn faster than the DB could turn, and that's where he created a lot of his separations. Mike says masks his intentions. That's a perfect way to describe that. So yeah, he masks his intentions as a route runner, like I mentioned. When we get into yards after the catch, I was left wanting a little bit more there. I gave him a 7 for yards after catch. I really felt like no, I gave him a 7.5. So I felt like he consistently got what was there. If he caught it with that separation and room to run, he had the speed to take it until somebody would catch up with him or run him out of bounds or whatever. I did not see a lot of elusiveness or tackle breaking. So if he caught it on a screen, for example, and there was good blocking, he would run until somebody got to him. But once somebody got to him, if somebody had a good shot to tackle him, they tackled him. And That's, I think, the way to describe it is he got what was there, but he really didn't get a whole lot more. So overall, the only category I haven't talked about here is his physicality. I gave him a 7.5 for that, and that's actually a pretty good score for being, a finesse slot type of player. He's 205 pounds, so he's not super thin, which you love to see. If you're going to come in and play in the NFL, and you're, especially if you're playing in the slot, you're catching a lot of passes over the middle of the field, which he does. You're going to take a lot of hits, and you got to be able to stand up to him. And so, being 205 pounds, he fought through hand fighting well, and he didn't get bullied out there. So I think this is a big positive. He did well as a blocker too. I felt like there were some reps where he held a block for a long time, and was a very willing blocker, but also had the strength to do it. So yeah, strong for a finesse player. And overall, I liked what I saw out of Abuka. I felt like if you were to take kind of the archetype of a Jalen McMillan last year, but more athletic, more well-rounded, better player overall, Abuka is kind of the high end of that archetype. He came out as a 77 in my overall grades, which, puts him right square in the middle of the range of a fantasy starter. I do expect him to get good draft capital. He's got the pedigree from being a 5-star recruit coming out of high school. He's got the college performance. He's got the big name school from Ohio State. I think he's going to do well at the combine. Brian Hartline has a great reputation for developing the technical aspect of the wide receiver position, and that shows up all over his tape. So I think the reputation that he has earned as kind of this unsexy name that is not going to make these huge highlight plays, but he's going to be Mr. Reliable, that's spot on. Like, he's going to get overlooked maybe in some dynasty circles because he's not the fastest guy, or he's not breaking all these tackles after the catch or making these huge contested catches. But he's just, I mean, kind of like Chris Olave, right? He's just going to get open and be a solid wide receiver too, and put up fantasy points. He's going to get good draft capital, so he's going to get an opportunity probably right away. He's going to go out there. He's NFL ready. He's going to get open. He's going to rack up PPR points. He might not have this top 5 wide receiver ceiling, but I think he's going to be a solid mid to high end wide receiver 2 in the NFL for a long time for your fantasy roster, which can definitely add value. I think especially if you're picking in the late first round of a rookie draft, which means you were a top contender, and you get to add a piece like Abuka that's going to be a solid, consistent contributor on your dynasty roster that you can start probably as a rookie. That's a great ad. When Chris Olave was coming out, I said he was like Hawkeye, right? Like, he's the Avenger that doesn't get any of the pub, but he kind of completes the team. And so if you're a contender picking in the late first, and you've got Thor and Captain America and Iron Man and all these guys already on your roster, so don't swing for some gigantic upside hit or miss type of guy at the end of the first round. Take Emeka Egbuka and add him to your roster, and he's going to help you win another championship. So definitely a solid piece. I'm a fan, and I think he's going to be a good dynasty asset. So again, because it's a solo pod, it's only 19 minutes into the show. We got a little bit of time. And I'm going to take a minute to just do a little bit of a Senior Bowl preview. This is kind of off the cuff, but Senior Bowl is coming up this week, and I think you should care about that as a dynasty manager. And I'm going to tell you why. So the Senior Bowl is a place where, if you don't know, it's in Mobile, Alabama. A guy named Jim Nagy puts it on. He's got a ton of NFL connections, and he invites a lot of the top seniors, and even now some juniors, early declares get invited to it, to come and show what they've got in kind of this all-star game format. But really, I would say even more so than the game itself, it's the week of practice. So a ton of NFL scouts show up for this thing, especially for some of these guys from a smaller school. It's a chance to see them on a level playing field against some of these other prospects, to see Were they just beating up on small school competition, or are they the caliber of athlete that can hang with these other top NFL guys? So you're seeing everybody on a level playing field. And these drills, I mean, you don't want to put so much stock in them that you're throwing out everything you saw on tape in college. A lot of people did that with Roman Wilson last year. I thought that was a mistake. He looked pretty good in some of the one-on-one wide receiver drills, but I didn't love his tape at Michigan. So you don't want to go too crazy, but you're going to see a lot of clips coming out probably on Twitter this week where a running back busts off a huge play in practice or torches a linebacker in a one-on-one drill as a receiver. I remember Tajay Spears popped like that a couple years ago at Senior Bowl. You're going to see wide receivers, some of them absolutely torching defensive backs. Because, I mean, in some ways it's unfair to the defender, right? To put them out there one-on-one against these wide receivers with no safety help. They'll have to face that sometimes in a real NFL situation. But generally, when you're in that situation, it's advantage wide receiver. So the wide receivers that are really good route runners, it's going to shine through in practice. And so some of those guys to keep an eye on. One, I think RJ Harvey and Devin Neal, both are guys that I think can thrive in an environment like this. Cam Skatibo as well. Woody Marks, like these types of guys that can really win in space are really going to thrive in this type of environment. Brashard Smith, you could add to that list as well as a running back. Trevor Etienne, too. I mean, there's a lot of good running backs. I didn't even mention Ollie Gordon, Damian Martinez. There's a lot of good running backs to keep an eye on, particularly if they come out of that when they announce like player of the week at the end of the practice week. The coaches vote on that. That's a pretty big nod in a loaded running back room. If one of these guys stands out in that way, they're going to get pass protection reps. Some of the wide receivers I'm really interested in keeping an eye on. One is Jalen Noel out of Iowa State. I think he's a really strong separator and is going to stand out in a setting like this. Xavier Restrepo is going to thrive in this kind of environment. I'm excited to see Ty Felton and Jalen Royals. Those are some of the better route runners, I think, from this group. And then as far as the contested catch, the big-bodied guys, Savion Williams and Alec Eomanor are two guys that we know that they are kind of contested catch savants, size speed guys. Can they run routes? What do they look like in these drills? And I'm really interested to see that. Jaden Higgins, you could throw in that category too. So yeah, a lot to keep an eye on. And the quarterbacks. I don't think it's a very strong quarterback class, but I think you've got Jalen Milroe, which if he gets the draft capital, you have to care about him from fantasy because of how much he can run the football. You've got Riley Leonard, Riley Leonard and Will Howard both, just played in the national championship game that had to have gotten NFL scouts' attention. Now they're coming into Senior Bowl week. So let's see how those guys look in that setting against other top NFL prospects and what GMs think of them. Because again, with quarterback, if you're in a super flex league, draft capital, it matters a ton. Even if you don't think Riley Leonard's a very good quarterback, if for some reason he went in the first round, now you have to care about him. And this is the week for these guys to show that they belong in the conversation. I think it's probably a long shot for Leonard or Howard to be first round picks. Jalen Milroe could be. So definitely keep an eye on those guys. So that's just a little bit about Senior Bowl. Don't put too much stock in it, but there are a lot of guys that kind of break out that week and get a lot of buzz, and their draft stock goes way up. So pay attention to it and enjoy it because it's a fun week. And with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and sign off here in just a second. You can find me on social media at CouchScoutsFF on Twitter/X. And I haven't plugged any of our stuff yet. CouchScouts.com. Definitely check out the website. If you haven't bought a subscription yet, you should. This is the best time of year. We've got great tools and resources to help you dominate your rookie draft. We've got a rookie guide, which is going to be the ultimate cheat sheet to your rookie draft. We have an all-22 film room that you can check out, particularly if you play IDP, individual defensive players. We have a all-22 film room for that. I don't know of anywhere else that you can watch all-22 on these defensive prospects. So definitely some good resources. Get in there, check it out, CouchScouts.com. And if you're new, maybe you did just buy a subscription. If you didn't know, we have merch. So I'm right now, if you're watching on the video feed, I'm rocking my super comfortable Couch Scouts hoodie. We've got shirts, hats, stickers. So, if you love our brand and you want to support us, and, I think our logo looks pretty cool. So check that out and think about buying some of our merch. But last thing I'll shout out is our free Discord. A lot of people have joined this week. Doesn't cost you anything. We just love getting to know the people that are listening to our show. So hop in that Discord, and the link will be Twitter bio in the show notes for this show, all that kind of stuff. So jump in there, chat with us, post your trades. We'll react to news. We'll hang out on game day, all that good stuff. Leave us a great review. Drop some comments. We'll look forward to interacting with you guys, and we'll see you next week.